for joining this dialogue. It is a dialogue, special one, but we also have a special person, Abhishekta, who will take you through this. Abhishekta has joined us about a month and a half now, but Abhishekta brings over 15 years of experience in the development sector, with a focus on communication in the impact space. She believes communication is not just about amplifying the work of social sector organizations, but also about bringing attention to stories that need to be heard. She values the power of storytelling of communities and individuals as a way to build awareness, shift perspectives, and enable more inclusive conversations. A sociology postgraduate from Delhi School of Economics, she also holds a management degree in social initiatives from IIM Kozhikode. Over the years, she has worked with organizations of varying scales across different thematic areas with a consistent focus on bringing in the voices, perspectives, and insights of diverse stakeholders. I welcome Abhishekta and hand it over to you now to take us on this beautiful journey of dialogue in the inclusion dialogue.
Thank you so much, Supriya ma'am. Thanks for the kind words and a very generous introduction. So, good evening, everybody, and hello. Like Supriya ma'am already said, I'm a new team member of Vision Empower, and it is my pleasure to welcome all of you here today. Thank you so much for joining. We are really excited to have you here, especially in the first session, which is the inclusion dialogue. Let me begin by giving you a context of what this dialogue is about. So Vision Empower conceived of this space where, we will welcome different voices, practitioners, organizations who work in the space of inclusion, because we believe that it's not just our work which is important. It's very important to collaborate, learn from each other, and act together. There's a power of collaboration we believe in. And with this idea, we set up the Inclusion Dialogue series. And today is the first session, which is titled From Classrooms to Campuses to Communities. So now, before I begin, inclusion as a definition is very broad, I feel, and it can also mean different things to different people. But today's discussion will focus on inclusion in the context of education. And most importantly, inclusion for persons with disabilities, especially looking at persons with visual impairment. Today's conversation will look at an inclusion journey, starting from schools to when a child moves to the higher education space and then gets integrated to the larger community, and what it takes at each stage to make that journey more equitable. Uh, Now, since this is the first session and we are launching in the month of March, a month that also celebrates Women's Day, we also celebrated the Science Day. And this year, the theme for the Science Day was also Women in Science. We thought we should have women practitioners who are working in the space of inclusion and accessibility. Uh, and really the choice was very easy because we thought we know those three people we wanted to have in our first session. And all the three of them are people who are very well connected with Vision Empower in different capacities. So it's a privilege and honor to welcome three amazing practitioners who are doing a lot in the space of inclusion and accessibility. So welcome, Sylvia. Sylvia is a member of Vision Empower. She had a remarkable journey in the IT space. She's led very reputed IT companies. She's, built very large scale technology services, things probably I even don't know, but, but I know she's had a very big, corporate career. But I think even in her corporate career space, she's always been engaged in social initiatives. And over the time, made a conscious decision to move to the impact space. Today, she's focused in making making STEM education accessible to students with visual impairment. Welcome, Sylvia, and looking forward to hear a lot from you today.
Same here, Abhishekta, same here. Thank you so much for
Okay.
having me. Thank you.
Our next guest is Sonia. Sonia is from CSpathshala and ACM India Education Initiative. I think a lot of you from Vision Empower know her already. She spent over 3 decades working in the intersection of education, entrepreneurship, and community development. Through her work, she has built large-scale teacher networks and communities of practice, reaching out to thousands of children and schools across India. What really stands out is her deep community engagement. She works with marginalized women, she works with workers in the informal sector, and she's creating a big entrepreneurship base out of them. Welcome, Sonia, and we look forward to hearing a lot from you about your experience and journey here.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And hello to the Vision Empire family. I'm so glad to be back here. Yeah.
Okay. Uh, our third guest is also very special, and many of you might have seen her and know her. She is Neha Trivedi, and she is from an organization which is Spandan. It's a very unique organization. Spandan is helping other organizations, universities, become inclusive and accessible for persons with disabilities. She specializes in working in areas of building awareness and inclusive education spaces. She's been at the forefront of many key legislative changes in the country, like, for example, steering the deployment of accessible ATMs, steering inclusive banking rules, so on and so forth. She has many publications. And Neha, let me tell you, even I have gone through your reports and I have prepped up for this panel discussion. So thanks to you and thanks to a lot of your publications. It's been amazing reading them. So welcome to you, Neha.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me. Thanks a ton.
Right. So welcome to all of you, and of course to the audience. Though all of our panelists, they work in different spaces. Of course, the largest space is inclusion and accessibility. But I see that there is a common thread across all of these amazing women leaders today. All of them are very passionate, and they share a common passion for building a very equitable and inclusive society. And each of them, when I spoke to them, I believe each of them told me that education should be for everybody, and it should provide equal opportunities to everyone. With that, let's start today's panel discussion. Okay. So before we get into, our serious conversation today, I want to start by asking a very personal question to all the three of you. And maybe one by one, you all can, share your experiences. So what drew you to this space? Or what made you feel that this is something which is very important and you have to work on, the space of inclusion and accessibility? So is there a personal journey or reflection or that moment which made you feel that this is very important and I have to do something about it? So maybe Sylvia, you can start, and then Sonia and Neha.
Sure. Thanks so much, Abhishekta. Thanks. And thanks a lot, Sonia and Neha. It's a real privilege to be with both of you and, be able to have this dialogue. So, Abhishekta, my answer is kind of boring because it was not by design at all. After spending, more than 2 decades, like in the IT industry, I really wanted to move to the development sector. And I joined an organization called Janagraha, which really works in the space of quality of life in urban cities through systemic change. So I was heading their technology platforms, and it was a good 5 years there. And I did understand a lot about the development sector there. I understood how it works, and what are the nuances of making it work. What is a donor relationship? How do you go about funding, and how important many of these different themes are in the NGO sector. But what I missed out and what I really wanted to do was to have an impact on a few lives. Even if it was a few lives, I wanted to have I wanted to have a direct impact on those lives. And that has been my social calling. So after 5 years in Janagraha, when Supriya, an old and very dear friend, asked me to join Vision Empower, I didn't think twice. I felt it was my calling. And I have not looked back since then, Abhishekta. And in the last 7 years, it's not been an easy journey, but it's been a brilliant, brilliant journey. Be it the people who I have met, be it the children that we speak to, be it the teachers who are here. Every day has been a day of learning, of fulfillment, and of a real understanding that comes from understanding the words like inclusion, accessibility, accommodations, and the profound impact that these words have on the lives of the students with visual impairment. So never look back. Very happy to be in this space today, and I'm sure I will do whatever I can to continue to contribute in this space, Abhishekta.
Sylvia, this is not at all a boring answer. So we can, we see a lot of energy that you bring to the table, and also in office. I've seen you so closely. So I know it is not just by design, there has been an inner calling. Right.
True, true.
So, Sonia, now looking forward to your answer.
Yeah, so I won't get into why I came to CSpathshala. Okay? I'm just going to jump because that'll take really long. But I will tell you what happened. Jam, who of course is Professor Ramanujam, he and I were the program committee co-chairs for CTIS, that is the Computational Thinking in Schools Conference. And he proposed getting Supriya and Manohar as our invited speakers. Okay. You will not believe till then, because we work in the field of computational thinking, for us, inclusion meant, children who did not have access to computers. Okay. It was very basic, right? That's what I thought. And, we always thought that through computational thinking, we were making abstract things more easy for children to understand through visualization. It had never come across to my mind that there was such a large population that I was not even aware of. So when Supriya spoke, right, when Supriya and Manohar took the session, we had a couple of people from Vision Empower who did the activities, and we did not even know that CSpathshala activities were adapted, and we saw a couple of videos, but it was not that. It was this whole thing that we take visualization for granted. And you'll not believe, after that CTIS, Jam and I, we sat down and we spoke, and we said that CTIS will always have a CTN inclusion as a separate session, right? So we have that as one of the thematic areas for the conference. And my journey with Supriya began there. And of course, then I met Sylvia, I met all of you online. And then I was very fortunate that last year I could come. And I'll tell you another thing that really touched my heart. And Sylvia, Supriya, everybody was there. And I see, I've done online training sessions, right? In person, I did it for the VE team for the first time. And I had bought cashews from Goa for systematic counting. You will not believe, right? There were three teachers who could see, and there was one teacher who was visually impaired. And everybody else took for granted the number of cashews in each bowl. And the person who was visually impaired told me, he said, Sonia, this bowl has 16 cashews, not 15. So, that's what I'm saying. It really touched my heart. And like, I'm so fortunate. I feel I'm fortunate that I'm here to be part of this dialogue today. So thank you, Supriya. Thank you, Sylvia, for having me here. Yeah, it's very special for me.
Yes.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Sonia. And you are so correct when you say that we take things for granted, and maybe that is why we often forget the ecosystem. That inclusion is very important and cannot be ignored. And moving to Neha, you tell me what brought you here. How did you start your journey in the space of inclusion?
Yeah, I don't really have any story because I think I landed up in this space out of accident. I was just a young person looking out for a job that was fun, that was simple, that involved things that were interesting enough. And I could have found anything, and I just happened to find disability, right? I mean, there was no agenda, there was no plan, there was no motivation, there was no larger things. And that's where I find it interesting that we often tend to look at this sector from a space of impact. We tend to look at it from a space where people come into the social sector as a space to do good, to make impact, to sort of do all those things. But we also need to probably acknowledge that the sector is also just a fun place to be in. Like, it's just, if you like innovation, if you like interesting things, if you like simple things, if you like the idea of being out of the box, then really the social sector is your thing. It's not, I mean, the sector is for you rather than you being there for the sector. And oftentimes people get into the social sector, especially the disability space also, thinking it is like, we will do something good for somebody else. But more often than not, it's the sector that's also aligning with who you are and what you want in your life. So I think for me, it's just been that. Like, I think day one of my quote unquote job was at a place where, my boss was my ex-teacher, and he was just looking for somebody to help him solve one of those quizzes at that point in time, which that time was the copyright law of India and how to make it accessible. And as a 23 or a 24-year-old person, we thought that we could change it in 2 days, and we had to submit this representation to the government, and we were like, we do it. And then we actually put that representation in 2 days. It took another 6 years to change it. But I think the part that I enjoy the most is just the fact that there are so many interesting, simple things to ideate on and create new ideas about. So it's more of innovation and having fun that excites me about the sector. I mean, that's why I'm here, because I enjoy it, and therefore I've been able to be here for so long and actually make it sustainable for my life.
Great. I hope there are many youngsters who have joined this, panel discussion, because it's very important that they listen to you, they get inspired to stay on and continue their work in the development sector.
I think I just want to say that people should only stay in the sector if it works for them. They should not stay in the sector to help the others. If you do it for
Absolutely.
yourself, then it's the only time you might actually be able to do inclusive work. Otherwise, hierarchies of power come in.
Absolutely. And, I often do not like the word beneficiary. I always think that, we are the beneficiaries. We benefit from being in the sector, learning so much. So I understand that sentiment, Neha. Okay, so let's move forward. And I think we have a good number. We are 74 now, and I hope that we'll have more people joining in. So, Sylvia, so my first question is to you, because, like I said, that we are going to see the journey of a child's life. You're in school, and then you move to the higher academic space, and then you get integrated to the community. So when we talk about inclusion in the school setup, how does a real classroom look like from the inclusion point of view? Because I understand that there are progressive policies in our country, at least. But then, do you think that schools are equipped to support students who are visually impaired? Or do you see that, the reality is there is some gap somewhere?
Yeah, very true, Abhishekta. Yeah. So there are, the intent is there, the policies are there, be it the RPWD Act 2016 or be it the NEP 2020. All of them have a lot of intent, and but the implementation is where it's really missing. So what do we mean? Like you said, what do we mean by inclusion? So it's having a classroom where you have children with any impairment or no impairment, or everybody being in the same classroom and learning at the same time. I think that's the crucial thing. There is no delayed learning. There is no post school, I'm going to start learning this or understanding this. At that same space where they all learn together. I think that's for me is like what inclusive learning is about. So if there are students there who are looking at their textbooks, they should be visually impaired students there who are looking at their braille books, or they have a braille reader, a hexes, or some kind of thing that will help them to read. If the students are going through a picture, they're looking at a drawing on the board, the children with visual impairment should have something that will, either it could be a tactile drawing, it could be a model, but whatever, but they are learning at the same time. And when the teacher teaches, they need to understand that there are all kinds of children who are sitting there, and they need to cater for every child in that room. And that is the single point of failure, where the teacher does not have the ability to be able to teach every child in the classroom the way that child needs to be taught. So I think that's where our implementation is comes into it really fails, where we don't empower the teacher enough, where sometimes the teacher really has no agency. They don't understand what it is for to make a visually impaired child understand a concept, or to make any other child with any other disability, how are they supposed to make them understand this concept? And in many cases there are classrooms where they have resource teachers, or resource people who sit with these, with the children with different abilities, and they are provided with whatever is required for them, which again makes it inclusive. So until we empower the teachers enough in our classrooms, until we make sure that they understand that there are different kinds of students sitting there, and everybody needs a different kind of attention to make sure that they are understanding the same concept. Inclusion in the classroom is still something that's, a little far away, at least in the schools that we are working with today.
Okay. Silva, thank you. But, I hear you talking a lot about teacher preparedness. So my next question is maybe for Sonia, because she works a lot with teachers. So Sonia, tell me, how prepared are teachers today to create inclusive classrooms? Because they are an important part of the classroom ecosystem. And also you could talk about a little more about the role of CSpathshala, because you create this community of practice. You try to strengthen teachers' abilities. You try to make strong and better special educators. So, bring your insights and share with us. So, yeah.
Yeah. So thank you so much. And I'll take it on from where Sylvia mentioned, right? So I think the most important, also let me say, teachers are not prepared. Let me put it that way. Like none of our BEd degrees or any of them prepare them for this kind of work, right? And what Sylvia said is like, how do we empower those teachers? And I feel there are two key things. One is teacher development programs, right? It cannot happen. You can't say that, hey, I have done one program for teacher development and my teacher is equipped and my teacher will be able to take it forward. That does not work, right? We have to keep doing refreshers, right? And that's something that we do in CSpathshala. And one of the models that has worked well for us is creating a cadre of master trainers, right? So what happens is those resources then remain in the community, right? And they can then provide handholding support to the other teachers. And, that is how that whole community works, right? And the other thing is, and that role more than CSpathshala is played by Vision Empire, is appropriate content, right? So even though we have content for computational thinking, it needs to be adapted to suit those students, right? Like Sylvia said, that it should be the same kind of content going across, right? But that needs to be adapted for suitability, for being inclusive in the true sense, right? And when you mentioned about the community of practice, that is what we believe in, that if you have developed something, right, sharing it, right, sharing the best practices uh, is the golden rule, right? It should not happen that I'm trying to reinvent the same wheel that Vision Empire is trying to do. So there are so many people that who meet me and talk about doing things for children who are visually impaired, not, or any other work that they're doing. And I just point them back to them, right, to the team here. So I feel strengthening that community and empowering the teachers is the best way to go, because only then can we, make this path sustainable. So, yeah.
Right.
Thank
So
you.
I have, maybe, once I have a question for a linked question for Neha. Maybe once I ask her, I'll come back to certain mindset questions again, because it sounds simple, but I know it's not very simple. Preparing them, equipping them with the right skills is not so easy. So I have some questions, but maybe, once I ask Neha, and then again, I'll come back to you, Sonia. Yeah. So Neha, now these set of students who are prepared, who graduate from, say, a very inclusive school, then will have to move to the higher education space. And in one of your reports, I read that, 3% seats are reserved for PWDs, yet, very small percentage of student seats are covered. So I'm interested to understand, where is the gap? Is it the institutional readiness? Is it that, the right information do not reach the students, or are they not prepared? So what is your take on that?
Yeah, Vishikta, thanks. So, as you said, right, actually 5% reservation in all higher education institutes which are government aided. And we hardly have students going into higher education. In fact, enough data has shown that there is a significant drop in enrollment from school into higher education for students with disabilities. And the All India Survey of Higher Education, in fact, the most recent one, like the one before that was abysmal anyways, and now it's even further dropped, which means that whilst we are doing so much work at school education, somehow it's not transitioning into higher education, right? And I mean, I think maybe I answer this a little differently. Like, if there are 78 people here, can you imagine when all of y'all went to schools? Chances are most of us went to neighborhood schools, right? Like, schools were closest to our homes. They were also very familiar. The audience was very familiar. It was all protective environment. And then you remember the first day of you going to a college, and the amount of diversity that you were exposed to. It was many more folds than what you were used to in school. And then you think about yourself at a workplace, and that keeps increasing. So if we look at our journeys, if as human beings, from the time we were children to the time that we are adults, our exposure to diversity keeps expanding. The concern, however, is that we are seeming to be open to all types of diversity except for this one type, which is disability. Because if I ask you a question to all the people present here, all of us are in diverse careers. If you had to just take a 30-second break and ask yourself this question, how many of you believe that any person with any disability could have studied what you studied in higher education and could be doing the career that you are involved in right now? And we don't have to verbally say it out to me, but just be very, very honest to yourself internally to answer that question about every single thing that you have studied and worked at in all your different career options. How many of us truly believe that any disability person would be able to do that studying and do that career? And I know from having worked with a lot of groups, out of the 76 of us, a lot of us will have a lot of doubts and hesitations. We might feel that, okay, maybe this disability will be able to do this, but maybe this will not be able to do this, and maybe they'll be able to do this part, but will not be able to do that part, and all sorts of doubts, right? Which is very, very prevalent in society. And this is what translates into higher education. Because, see, each of us holding this value or doubt is not translating into a barrier for a person with disability. But now you think that you are a principal of a higher education college, you are a teacher of a higher education college, and a student with disability comes to you saying, I want to study this because I like this and because I'm good at it. But you are carrying all these doubts because of which, readiness is only comes when there is openness. You have to be mentally open first to be able to be ready to actually start becoming prepared. So let me ask you an alternative question, right? And this maybe I can request one of the participants to answer, which is out of the 75 of us, can anybody share a skill that you've always wanted to learn, but you've always put aside? Like, it could be swimming, it could be cooking, it could be horse riding, it could be anything. I'm sure all of us have a skill which we would have loved to learn. Yeah, Monica, can you share?
Learning how to play the piano.
Okay, learning how to play a piano. Very simple, very, very, very concrete example, right? So, like that, we could all have a lot of skills. I mean, we all have one which we always wanted to do, but we are holding back. I want you to reflect on this. The reason why we've not learned it is not because that skill is difficult. Because a lot of people play the piano, a lot of people cook, a lot of people horse ride. What is stopping us from doing it is mentally we are emotionally entangled from trying it, right? We either have a fear that we'll fail, we either have a fear that we won't ever be able to do this, which never lets us learn that skill. And to me, inclusion is learning a skill. Being inclusive is a human skill that all of us can learn, but we all are hesitated with our doubts and fears based on our own personal experiences. And because we don't learn that, higher education institutes are not even open to start becoming ready. Because once you become open, the learning the skill part is relatively not that complicated. But if as a teacher and as a principal, you believe that no, X disabilities cannot study X courses, then there's no conversation to begin with. And that's where most of higher education is becoming a block, where universities are not even considering the idea that students with disabilities can be part of every single course that they offer to students without disabilities.
Very well. Thank you, Neha, for that. And, again, at Vision Empower, we've seen this, that there is a big mindset block and the barriers, even at the school level, where teachers think that, students who are visually impaired will not be able to do certain subjects like math and science. So my next question to Sylvia is, Sylvia, how do we then begin this mindset change? Because at the formative years, when teachers do not have this belief, how can they translate it to their own students? So what are we doing? What does Vision Empower do to break that mindset barrier?
Sure, sure. Thanks so much, Abhishekta. But I think, Neha, I think that was very, very well put. And I can only hope and pray that every member of my team did say that they believe that every disabled person would have been able to do what they did. I can only hope and pray for that, Neha. But I think that was very well said, because I think that is the mindset that we're trying to break here. And, we have these conversations on a regular basis with our own teachers, with our own teams, that you need to first believe in these children. I mean, you need to first believe that they can do it, before they themselves believe, you need to believe. And I think that was what Neha was trying to say. And if we have one slight amount of doubt in our mind that they could not have pursued what we did, then where are we? What are we talking about here? Right? So I think very, very well put, Neha. And yeah, so I think these biases have been built over so many decades, Abhishekta. So, dismantling this is going to take a very, very long time. But I think it has to start with the students. It has to start with their own self-belief, because first it has to start with obviously the teacher's belief, but also their own, the students' own belief that, yes, this is something I can do. Because for years they've been told, this is not something you can do. This is not something that, is for you. It is only something that the visually children can do, because there's such a big optical bias towards this. So first breaking that, and it gives me so much pleasure. And we show these Science Day events that happen all across India, where we have these students do these complex experiments, do these concept activities, which just builds that confidence in themselves, that yes, these are subjects I can learn, these are subjects I can really take a stab at, and I will be able to do well. We teach, Vision Empower teaches all your numeracy, all your simple numeracy through games. Why do we do that? Just to build that confidence among the students, that once they play the game, once they know the numbers, once they know, then we have so many places where we have children coming and say, oh, we didn't know maths was so simple. Oh, we didn't know that science could be done like this. So I think it's there. That's where, that's where these mindsets get broken. Teachers, the very, very important stakeholders in this whole ecosystem are they. Their belief, and today that is the biggest myth that we are trying to break, is with the teachers. They have been teaching in in blind schools for decades, and there is such an ingrained belief in them that these children cannot learn these concepts. If they do addition, subtraction, that's more than enough for them to get by in life. Breaking that myth, and it's so, the kind of happiness we get when we see these teachers come into our experience zones and say, okay, now tell me, with very lot of confidence, they'll say, okay, now tell me how you can teach light to the students. And we actually take out models, keep it in front of them and say, this is how you can teach light. And then when you can see their faces change. It's not that they're doing it because of that they don't want to teach. They're obviously in this field because they also want to do something good for the children, but they don't know how. They don't know how to do it. So when they can actually see these things, and they actually go back with the belief that, my God, yes, with these resources, with these models, with these things, I can actually teach my children some of these concepts such as geometry, which, the whole XRCV team and Neha has now helped build, and Paul is also here. They've built this beautiful geometry kit, which is so easy for children to use. The teachers are so happy to get these. Parents, another big stakeholder here. They need to believe, they need to see the passion in the children. They need to see the belief in the children that, yes, my child can take these subjects and go forward. They are so scared that, what will the future be? What will my child's future be? As it is, he has such a tough life. Am I going to make it even more difficult for him to learn to do by making him learn maths and science and things like that? So it's all about breaking these, the children themselves first, getting the confidence that these are things that I can learn. The teachers, given the resources, given the material, given the activities, given how they can do these activities, understanding that these are concepts that can be taught to these children and the parents. And we have these, webinars that we have with many of the students who have taken up science streams, be it with the, be it in higher education, be it doctorate, be it masters, be it having careers with Microsoft and with, many other organizations. So finally, proof is in the pudding, right, Abhishekta? We have to show them proof. We have to show people that this is something that can happen. It is something that, visually impaired students can do. And, it's only after that, after I don't know how many more years and how many more people go through this trial, that, they will actually come out saying that, yeah, okay, we now believe that this is something that can happen. But I think we are very far from there, but it will be one step at a time, whatever, every drop builds an ocean. So we do our bit, and we hope that one day we will have many, many more Vidyas around and Kartiks around who will make a difference to this world. Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Abhishekta.
Yeah, thank you, Sylvia. But I take that line where you said that, teachers sometimes they're very complacent. They think that, okay, if my student learns math, little addition, subtraction, that's enough. Now, my question to Sonia is, how do you move from this just including students to truly empowering them, truly enabling them? Like for a sighted student, I'm sure it doesn't end there, just doing math, just being able to do some calculations, right? There is a lot of aspirations for them. So how do we break that mindset? How do we bring that behavior change amongst teachers where they are not just including students, but also enabling them, making them, better learners, more empowered?
Yeah, so thank you. So a couple of points that Neha and Sylvia mentioned, right? There's so much meaning in that. But there is one thing, and maybe because I work in other sectors as well, what I feel is one thing we need to change is the sympathetic approach. And I'm not saying it only with visually impaired. I say it, and that's what when we were talking with Abhishekta also, I was telling her, I tell everybody that even the products that my entrepreneurs make, no, don't buy out of sympathy. Buy because the quality of the product is good, because it is not sustainable. So that sympathetic approach needs to be moved away, right? Don't my children are as good, right? There is nothing. So you will not believe that when I'll just give you one of the examples that we have at the CTIS platform, right? When we do the poster sessions, okay, the poster sessions are put up when we say that these are unplugged activities. We don't say these are activities for visually impaired children, right? You will not believe the number of teachers who have taken the games, and like Sylvia mentioned, the amount of effort that the VE team puts in creating those games. You will not believe those games have been taken up by so many schools across the country, because these are innovations. Give them the due respect, right? And what I'm saying is, it's not just being useful to teach our set of children, right? So this is such a fun way to teach maths to everybody. And when we speak, right, we talk about computing for all. And when we say computing for all, we actually mean it, right? This is not exclusion for anybody. And what I'm saying is that I may have to pitch it a little differently. I may have to tweak, and don't we have to do that for other things, right? Like this is just a short story of my older daughter, okay? She'll not believe she just could not understand Pythagoras theorem. And I was like, you have an exam tomorrow. For some reason, she just could not understand. I tried everything on this earth, and my husband was like, can you just let her be? Yeah, just leave it. If she doesn't know Python. I said, no, but that is the basis for so many proofs, right? But I also had to think that how do I teach her how do I explain to her what is the Pythagoras theorem, right? So what I'm trying to say is that these are concerns, these are actual problems that we face too, right? And how do we overcome them? And this is all by this sort of appropriate games that, and I'll tell you another thing, that it has to be fun for the teacher too. See, Sylvia is saying it's fun for children, but it as a teacher, if I find that joy, I have seen the delivery in the classrooms work like magic, because then I automatically believe that this works. So I feel that is one good way to go. Yeah. Thank you.
Awesome. I think a lot of our audience will also have, follow-up questions about these games that you're talking about. Maybe they would also want to test and try for their own, because there are practitioners who have joined from other organizations, I can see. So yes, I mean, we will give everybody an opportunity to ask our delegates questions. So just maybe another 5-10 minutes, and then we'll open the floor for more questions. Now, thank you, Sonia, for that. That answers a lot of my questions. And then now to you, Neha. You help Spandan as an organization, and you as the founder of Spandan help higher education, institutions become inclusive. So I want to know, what is inclusivity in practice? Is it to do with infra? Is it to do with access? Is it to do with policies? Is it to do with, again, we are talking so much about mindsets and behavior change. So what is it? When do you say that, okay, this college is inclusive?
Yeah, that's a high aspiration for any place to be called fully inclusive. I don't think as individuals, all of us being in sectors also for so many years, I don't think I can ever claim that I'm fully inclusive. We are all work in progress, right? And I think I really want to borrow from what Sonia said, that, it has to, like, just like as it has to be fun for the teachers, we often forget in this inclusion journey that inclusion is about all the stakeholders in the space, right? So when I go to a higher education institute to build inclusion, yes, we are trying to make that system inclusive, but we're not aiming to make that system work only for students with disabilities, because then it won't be inclusive. So inclusive means that you are creating a system where every single person can participate equally, right? Which is what Sylvia shared earlier as well. And I think also want to touch upon what she said, that, whilst we are very far in the disability rights space to create inclusion, because this is also Women's Day situation, I want to just remind everybody that 1981 was the first international convention for women. The first international convention for the disabled is only 2006. So please, let's be patient. I think we are moving at a much faster pace with disability rights than we were with women's rights, because we have that background of right-based work in the world in general, right? So I think we also, I think sometimes we all get so frustrated being in the sector because the change is so slow. But I sort of keep reminding everybody I work with that the fact that it's moving so fast also needs to be acknowledged, because in the last just the 10 years that all, like, we might have been around, you've seen so much change, from not having one school do STEM to today having so many schools do STEM is a huge, we tend to undermine our own process sometimes, right? So when it comes to higher education inclusion, it's really about an holistic space. It's about from the entry point of a student in a college, so right from admission till they graduate, which is placements, how do you make sure that any student with disability is able to participate in all the processes the same way that a student without disabilities? So the biggest problem in India is that most of the time, especially in higher education, inclusion gets restricted only to physical access. But physical access is just one piece of that story. The other piece is when you enter, how do you offer reasonable accommodations? Reasonable accommodations are things that people with disabilities require in order to participate equally, because the assumption is that right now systems are curated for people without disabilities. So when people with disabilities enter it, they require certain modifications and adaptations to be able to participate equally. Reasonable accommodation is not a favor that an institute does to a student. It is not charity that they do to a student. It is just what they require in order for somebody to participate equally. So what we do essentially is we help And this is where our work has been slow, because we really believe in getting investment from the institutes we work with. It is not about me going and giving a service, giving X services to students with disabilities, and then that's it, right? We expect that the institute invests in a full-time person on their ground, sets up a disability office to make sure that we create a policy structure and delivery of services to the student in a way that all aspects are covered. So it's right from admission processes to examinations to in-classroom teaching to out-of-classroom support to extracurriculars, because oftentimes campus life is a huge aspect of higher education institutes. And you can't have inclusion in a college. I mean, how many of us went to college to study? We went to college to hang out, right? And if you are going to have inclusion for students with disabilities that only focuses in studies and higher education, that'll never be inclusive. So you want to make sure that extracurricular activities, student clubs are also inclusive. Basically, a student should have the same fun experience of a college life that anybody else would have. And that's what we try to cover. It's a very slow process. We've had some very forward-looking higher education institutes who have had the privilege to work with. And what's been interesting to see is that when a process is set into motion, it does tend to spiral. It tends to, what starts with 3 people on a campus interested in building this office slowly starts expanding to include 5, 10, 15, to having a cultural change on campus where everybody believes that this campus should be inclusive. So that's what.
So
That's
Neha,
what
can you give me one couple of examples? Because I'm sure our audience would also like to check the websites of these universities for their own knowledge. So
Yes.
which are
So
the
in fact,
universities
what
that
I
are
would
very close
encourage,
to being called inclusive?
Yeah, so in fact, what I would also encourage the audience to share is there is this alliance that we've actually created, which in fact we was also part of initially, called the Inclusive Universities Alliance. We've recognized that right from the beginning, because this is such a nascent phase, individual universities who are doing great work need to collaborate with each other to create an alliance. So there is this, the website is called inclusiveuniv.in. I can put it up on the chat as well. Um, and if you go to that website, you'll have access to all the universities in India today who are actively involved in inclusion. Some of these are Azim Premji University, Ashoka University, Kriya University, IIT Delhi, IIT Madras, St. Xavier's College, Bombay, and many others. Triple IT Bangalore, of course. So your people can definitely have a look.
Sure.
I think where it's moved for me in the slow pace is, say, 5 years down, 5 years back, when a student with blindness would ask me, where should I go to study for higher education? Is there a really inclusive college? I would fumble even to recommend one. Today, we know that there are at least 10 I can recommend, and they'll actually get access and inclusion in those places, which I think is good movement forward. I'm not being greedy. I'm hoping
That
that
sounds
it will.
positive. That sounds
Yeah, I'm
positive.
hoping that it will spiral into larger, but the
Sure.
spiraling into larger will happen when the government gets involved. So the Inclusive University Alliance is now trying to have started doing advocating with the government to say, how do you take your policies into practice? So hopefully over the next 2, 3 years, that spiraling might happen.
Sure. Thank you. I think Supriya has also put a comment here. She's shared the
Yeah, she's
website.
put the link,
Yeah,
yes.
right. Okay. So I think we are, moving to the closure. So last set of questions for all of you. Sylvia, I think it's a little difficult question. Difficult for me, I think, because I was also thinking, what kind of answers will I get from the panelists? But still, I would like to shoot that question to you is if you have to prioritize one systemic or policy level shift to strengthen foundation learning for students with visual impairment, especially in the subjects like STEM, what would it be?
Yeah, I think we talked about this quite a bit in Vision Empower. And like I think Neha and Sonia would also agree. Accessibility cannot be an afterthought. Inclusion cannot be an afterthought. Things have to be born accessible or inherently accessible. I think that's the thing that we need. Be it textbook, be it the activities in your textbook, be it the experiments that you're talking about in your textbooks. Education has to be born accessible. It has to be accessible by design. It cannot be an afterthought. So I think that would be, today we work with NCRT. We're trying to see how we can get the textbooks to be born accessible. You think first how to make it accessible and then think about publishing your textbooks. So we're trying to get there, long way to go. But still, I think that would be what I would wish for, that people don't think of accessibility as an afterthought, but they really look at accessible being part of their systemic design.
Right, very powerful line, Sylvia. Thank you so much. Moving to Sonia. Sonia, you have worked across large teacher networks, communities of practice. What does it take to move from isolated good practices to systemic change at a scale?
Okay, so I'll tell you, taking on from what Sylvia said, right? If we have to go to talk at policy level, or if you have, like Neha said, you have to go to the government, what do we need? We need evidence, right? So the whole idea of CSpathshala to start, encouraging teachers to write up abstracts. And if you go and look at, so this is for everybody, the call for abstracts is open for CTS 2026. The idea is it's a simple Word document, but it is so, last time we had like over 500 submissions. But what I tell everybody, it is for us, it's not just an abstract, it is an evidence of implementation of activities in the classroom. And the whole idea is if we are able to, and what we do is a lot of things works on mentorship. So we provide a lot of mentorship for teachers to, from the abstract level to come up to a presentation level. And all of these, become part of collecting evidence. And, it also helps consolidate and we can approach the formal systems, right? We will see. And I'll tell you another thing that since we work at policy level, we have to go with some sort of impact, right? And this is one very good way of consolidating impact. And I have seen our teachers also now moving just from storytelling to classroom sessions, moving on to sharing student experiences, but now collecting data, right? So that is a very important step that I see, and I see that say a change happening at a systemic level. And another thing is that when you come to the conference, there are teachers who have been teaching for like 1 to 3 years. Then you see a slightly higher maturity for 3 to 5. And what ends up happening is they learn from each other. And I have seen these teachers go back, becoming ambassadors in their own organizations, in their own schools, right? So I feel that really helps. So yeah, thank you.
Wonderful, Sonia. Thank you for that. Neha, the last question to you, and then we'll, open the floor for audience's questions. So I think, institutions still see inclusion as a compliance requirement, as a mandate, rather than, making it an integral part of their ecosystem. Even as a society, I think, we all sometimes see it as a mandate. How do we begin to shift?
Yeah, I mean, if I knew the magic wand, I would be shifting it myself right now. So I honestly don't have too many answers here. But I think compliance, we've tried both. So, like what Sonia said, we've tried to do these models that work. So now we have individual institutes where inclusion has worked. We've tried to take those ideas to the government for advocacy level change to make sure that, because it's easy, implementation is proven now. We know what works. But the governmental mandate on this is also quite bad. It's quite missing, right? So we have laws, but there is no interest in the government to ensure its monitoring and compliance. So there is no and in India there is nothing happens if there is no negative repercussion of your non-compliance, right? So you have all these things you're supposed to comply, but if you don't comply, then it's okay. So if that doesn't change, then the only other option, and that's something that we want to now start experimenting with, is actually have young adults on campuses to start being the agents of change. These are students either with or without disabilities, but they are the main stakeholder on any campus. A campus won't function if there are no students. So if the students start demanding, then the response of the management and the response of campuses will be quite different. Um, we've seen this work in a couple of places. We need to steer a larger student movement of sorts This is my personal belief system that only when you have people talking for themselves, both as peer groups as well as students with disabilities saying, why is this missing? We need this. Then only will institutes start responding. Otherwise, we'll always have organizations who might take a few institutes to the court, come back, it all goes faulty. There are all sorts of debates. So we really need people to start taking active participation in this.
Wow, I think, that gives us a lot of motivation. So what we hear is we all have to be active agents of change. We all have to demand as a society and
Yeah,
speak
I
for
have a very
ourselves.
simple suggestion. Like
Yeah.
everybody here went to a college at some point. If after this dialogue, can each of you write to your college principal as an ex-alumni and just ask them, do you have students with disabilities in our college? If not, why not? And why don't you start considering this idea? Can we set up a meeting?
Yeah. So,
I'm sure
audience,
you have
can you
access
please
to your
react to this?
principals.
Can you just send a love or thumbs up to Neha and just, uh, show your energy here? So I'm seeing a lot of emojis coming in. Yeah. So, okay, lots of thumbs up coming in, Neha. Lovely, lovely, lovely. So, thank you so much to all the three of you for the very, insightful conversation. There's so much to take, from the conversation that we had, what you all shared. Now, I would love to open the floor for the audience to ask their questions. You can unmute yourself and ask the questions directly, or just can type your comments in the chat box, and we'll take a few. We have 5 minutes and maybe just, couple of questions. I think the first question is from, okay, Supriya, please go ahead.
Yeah, I can't resist asking one question. Yeah. So this is to Neha. So, Neha, you were the winner of the NCPDP Universal Design Awards 2025. So, first of all, congratulations for that. And would love to know how universal design how universal design can be incorporated into the process.
Yeah, so universal design actually is, depends on how you want to take it on the ground, right? Like sometimes universal design conversation also gets lost in trying to, make one common thing that works for all, when actually universal design is multiple things working for multiple people within a common space. So we are not trying to sort of create one solution and say everybody should fit that solution. We are trying to say that multiple solutions will fit multiple people, but all those people can operate within a common space. So I think with regards to when it comes to inclusive classrooms, whether it is school or college, it fundamentally acknowledges the teaching learning principle that every learner is different and will require to be responded to differently. So the more variety you add to teaching learning, the more universal you're making things, if that answers your question.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you. I'm sure the Vision Empire team here, who's listening in very carefully, I'm sure this will make a lot of meaning, and we can begin a lot of discussions and debates based on this. This being a starting point.
Yeah, and oftentimes it doesn't have to be either or. Like, we sometimes end up thinking it's either
Can
or.
somebody
Like,
has to go on mute, please? Yeah.
yeah, it doesn't have to be either all, it can be all. And that's, I think, the idea of universal design, that how do you make it as embracing as possible?
Right. Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah. Others may have questions.
Any other question for the panelists? Please unmute yourself. Monica, please go ahead. Monica, go ahead.
I have a question. So, like we were talking about universal design, and I think of the line one for all, like a solution that works for all. So I wanted to ask, so I work in the Earthian project, where Earthian is a sustainability competition that is a nationwide competition where students participate and undergo or execute all these activities that make them learn about conservation and environmental education. So one of my tasks were to make Ardhian accessible to visually impaired students. That is to make the activities accessible and more inclusive. So in the initial stages, I was having this this part where I was thinking, does it make sense to make an accessible booklet, or we have to create a booklet that is inclusive for everyone? And it made me think about the Olympics, for example. Sorry, I have I have an analogy, but for example, the Olympics, you have the Olympics accessible for a specific number of people, and then you have the Paralympics. In order, I see it as a step to make Olympics accessible. So would you say that is accessible enough, or it is better to choose a one size fits all kind of outlook? Like, for example, you were talking of a universal design that would work for everyone. So whatever was chosen for the Olympics, would you say that is an example of universal design, or is it accessible to say it is inclusive, but have a separate chain of events just for the differently abled people to make them feel inclusive? Thanks.
I mean, any of you can respond, or if
Sorry,
like all of
Sylvia,
you
you
want
want to
to.
share?
Neha, I thought it was up your.
Okay, okay. Sure. So, Monica, that this is a very important question that you ask, right? Because when you think about inclusion, the solutions for inclusion don't always look the same. So, we actually never want a universal idea that fits everybody. We are not in inclusion negating differences of individuals. We are, in fact, acknowledging that there are differences and they need to be catered to. And that is the universality of it, and not sort of remove the differences, right? So different contexts will require different types of solutions for them to be inclusive. So the example that you give for Paralympics, right? That and one good litmus test to ask yourself whether how to check for this is try and take the parallel gender example, or try and take a parallel other diversity example, right? So for example, for sports, women's sports and men's sports have traditionally always been kept different, and that does not make them separatist or exclusive, but it is fundamentally acknowledging that in sporting, diversity of different energy spaces is required. So within the Olympics context, Paralympics is taking the same stand, right? That it is saying that we their inclusion is access to sports makes it inclusive. The method of sporting becomes different for people with disabilities, just as it is different for men and women. But when it comes to, say, education, right? Men and women study in the same class, they can study the same things, they might have different learning styles. And similarly, students with disabilities will learn the same curriculum, will learn the same subjects, but will have different learning styles. So, in case of, say, your example of the the environmental events that you're running, if you're trying to make that inclusive, there is really no reason to have a separate event for people with disabilities, because everybody can, except for sports, actually, there is no other space in which we need to bifurcate events. Purpose needs to be the same, level of difficulties need to be the same, content needs to be the same, just the method of delivery will be different. We will not homogenize it and make it one, because then it won't work for anybody. We don't want it to not work for anybody. So give you a very specific example. Say, for example, if you were creating a certain type of an evaluation test for your event, you want to make sure that that test format is accessible. You don't want to dilute the difficulty level of that test or the content of that test. You simply want to adapt the method through which that test is taken. So you could have an option of taking the test orally, you could have the test of taking it on the computer, you could have the test being taken handwritten. Those are different methods of doing the test, but the test still remains the same. I hope that sort of answers that with your question.
Yes, this explains, because we were going through discussions of, oh, if they're going to be in the same competition with sighted peers,
Yes.
Do they have to take a different route, or should they have their own competition aside from? So I understand. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think Paul has also answered. I think he says that maybe we should call it contextual design rather than universal design. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
it's
think,
it's a
Yeah,
confusing,
it's
it's a
good about it.
confusing
yeah.
terminology, and I think that is
Yeah.
why I also
Yes.
asked that question. Yeah, thank you,
Right.
Yes.
thank you, thank
Yes.
you,
We can just
Monica,
take
for that.
one more and then we have to unfortunately wrap the interesting discussion. So any last question? There is a question from Pranjal.
Yeah,
So I'm
Pranjal,
a,
you
so,
can
yeah.
unmute and Pranjal, you could unmute and ask. Very happy that you have joined. Please,
Yeah,
are you in
Pranjal, please feel free
Guwahati?
to ask your question.
Pranjal is from IIT Guwahati. I don't know where he's.
Can I read out for Pranjal?
Yes, yes.
Yeah,
Pranjal,
I'm
are
a
you in
person
IIT
who,
Guwahati still,
Hi.
or yeah?
Oh,
Please,
no,
please.
please.
ma'am. Yeah. Sorry, I was finding it difficult to unmute. I'm currently working at IIT Jodhpur. I'm here working as assistant professor in the School of Design, IIT Jodhpur. And it's a
Welcome,
wonderful
welcome.
session. Yes, thank you, ma'am. And I myself is a person with dyslexia, and I wish like my family member had known about it, or maybe aware of it when I was growing. Uh, Although it went very well, it could have been different if known, or maybe it could have been different for someone else who knows about it. If you could shed a little bit light on that area, how the parents could be educated or informed about it, and how they can play a very important role during the entire process of education, that would be wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thanks, Prajwal. I'll just maybe give my thoughts on it, and then maybe Neha and Sonia can also put in their thoughts. I think, yeah, very, very important point. Family members play a very, very crucial, role in the lives of children with everybody, with any child. But I think with children with disability, I think they play a very, very critical role. I don't think that I have any straight silver bullet here, Prajwal. I think it is, we do it. We try and, talk to as many parents as we can, and, kind of help them understand the space. But, there is really no silver bullet. I remember the only thing that comes to my mind is an anecdote, which I remember we just had a webinar where we had students with, visual impairment, not students, adults with visual impairment who had taken up very successful STEM careers. And there was this girl Aditi, I think she works in the Microsoft with Microsoft, and she's one of their AI security engineers. Really the top notch work that you would expect, you would like any engineer to have. She was doing that role. And she was saying, one of the regrets that I have is that I have disobeyed my parents, or I don't listen to my parents. And it was she was actually sad about it. And she said, if I had to listen to them, then I would never have achieved what I have achieved. And it's true. I think, I don't know, but being a parent myself, I can understand the fear and the choices that the parent has to make for the child. So it is a very difficult conversation to have, but I agree. I think there is a very, very dire need for, people, the families to be educated, the parents to be educated. And I think we should look, we should probably see if there are NGOs in that space that can help with this. I don't know, maybe Neha knows of some who are there, and but I think it's a very important thing to be addressed, and which can make a very big difference in the lives of the children. Yeah, go ahead, Neha.
So, does Sonia want to share something?
I would just like to end by saying that I feel that, having these sort of dialogues, right, across different stakeholders is very important. Otherwise, what happens is we are working in our own silos, right? So I feel this brings in a lot more perspective, and we also get to learn, right, from each other. So I think it's very, very useful to have these kind of dialogues with other stakeholders as well. So yeah. That's
Yeah,
it.
just to
Thanks.
supplement that parent question, so parents are actually the biggest biggest piece in the child's life, right? And oftentimes in India, with the level of misunderstanding that people have around disability and society and how society conscious Indians are, I am saying this with great regret, but out of the 10 parents that I meet, a lot of them land up negatively impacting the student's life, not out of any bad intention, but just out of societal fear, societal pressure, and therefore self pressure and guilt. A lot of parents unnecessarily still today go through guilt that they did something wrong because of which they have a student with disability. And that itself, parents need a lot of hand holding, counseling support for, especially in the initial years, as we say this in a parents group, just because you have a child with disability at a hospital, they're not giving you a manual of how to work with a child with disability. So, with any education program, I say this, that it's very important to create parent support groups at school level, because the attitude of the parents really, really matters. So there are a lot of organizations, in fact, in the disability space in India, whether it is Forum for Autism or the Adult Support Kendra, like there are organizations that have been parent led when there were no NGOs in that space of disability. So parents have a real big positive role to play, but it's very important that we create parent support groups. So first the parent is supported to then support the child. Um, so parents also need emotional support to then be able to engage with the students. But for young adults, if I may say, at the college level, one of my biggest pleasurable roles when I used to work at XRCVC was just to tell the parents that now if you don't drop them, I will cancel the admission of the student in college, and then they will just drop the drop the control, because then they don't want to lose the child's admission. And that sometimes you have to really take the hard call for parents to be able to sort of just let go, because it's very, very difficult for parents to let go of their fears, and then they really ruin lives. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Thank you for
Right. So this is for the audience. If you have more questions for our panelists, please drop me a message. I have typed my email here. Unfortunately, we have to wrap this interesting session, and I think despite the barriers, the challenges, all of us present here, I'm sure, believe in this, and we are doing our bit to make some change. And I think with this, we should look forward to more such inclusion dialogues. And I think it's been a fantastic inaugural session. Thanks to Sylvia, thanks to Neha, thanks to Sonia for joining us, right? And I would also like to thank some of my team members, Meera for the tech support. Thank you so much, Meera. Sanjeevani for supporting me with all the comms collaterals. So it wouldn't have been possible without you. And of course, to Supriya ma'am, who's been the one to push me and to guide me. So over to you, Supriya ma'am. I think, we would like to hear from you and close this session today.
Sure. Thank you so much, Abhishekta. Your enthusiasm is infectious. So thank you. Thank you for taking it through till the very end. And thank you so much, Sonia. After the long travel all across the world, you just jumped into this. Thank you for,
Thank you so much.
despite all the things that you do. For the team here, whenever I'm talking to Sonia, she's driving down to the fisherwomen in Mumbai, training them, making sure they are making, she's helping them with their entrepreneurship. And, it's amazing to see the energy. It's really, really, thank you so much for joining. It makes this dialogue so much more meaningful. Yeah, and Neha, I mean, I have no words. I mean, we've basically taken baby steps, holding your hands and learning anything about the eye of inclusion from you, actually. So thank you so much for being there for us and with us in this journey. We still have a long way to go, and I think I have no words to express my gratitude for joining this very first session of this dialogue. And Sylvia, I don't know how to thank you.
So,
Yeah, I know.
we are
I'll
all
give you a
friends.
hug when we meet. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. It was a wonderful dialogue. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you
you,
so
team,
much
for
for
joining.
having
Thank
it.
you
It's
so much.
lovely.
Thank you so
Thank you
much.
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thanks to
Yeah.
all
Thank
the
you. Thank
audience
you,
also.
Thank you,
Abhishekta.
Paul. Thank you, everybody else. Thank you,
Thanks to everyone.
Neeraj. It was wonderful seeing you. I hope you're still here. Thank you. Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you,
Yeah,
everyone.
and
Have
we
a nice
have
evening.
shared the link to the feedback form. So my kind
Yeah.
request is please share your feedback because we really want to continue the dialogues and it'll help us get your insights. If we can change anything, the format, the time, if we can bring in good topics, then feel free to give us the suggestion. Thank you and have a lovely evening. Bye-bye.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.